and I read more than is probably healthy. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books. And today I am going to be talking about reading challenges. I've mentioned throughout the whole kind of lifespan of my channel that I do annual reading challenges, so challenges that last the entire year. It's what got me back into reading. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I kind of structure my reading around these reading challenges. So I thought as we go into a new year, it would probably be quite good to tell you about the reading challenges that I'm doing, how I approach them, and discuss some books that I've picked for some of the prompts for those challenges. So I did my first reading challenge in 2017. I'd gone from being quite a voracious reader to reading something like, I don't know, it was like 7 books in the years previous, and I really wanted to do something about my reading. I found the Popsugar Reading challenge and gave it a shot. I only read 40 books the first time round that challenge, or was it 30? Might have only been 30, can't remember. But I also had a baby that year, so that kind of threw me off course a bit. But in that I realised that I could make more time for reading, I could start talking to people about reading and just make it a bigger part of my life. And here we are, now I have a booktube and I read more than is probably healthy. Popsugar was the first reading challenge I did, and I will talk about that in more detail in a minute. And then I think the next year I then added the Around the Year reading challenge and the Reading Women challenge. I've done all 3 of them each year for the past couple of years, and so this year I kind of felt in 2020 I love the reading challenges, I still love them, but also I was kind of feeling like I wanted a bit more room to do other things with my reading that maybe didn't fit specific reading prompts and things like that. And although, you know, the reading challenges only take up about 2/3 of the books that I read in 2020, I wanted a bit more flexibility. So this year I was really picky about which reading challenges I went with, and as much as possible, for whatever I'm reading for the Popsugar Reading Challenge prompt, I will try and match it with a book that I'm reading for an Around the Year prompt as well. So I'm trying to double up books as much as possible, which means I can free up other time. Part of this has meant that I am no longer doing the Reading Women challenge, just because by the time they had released their challenge to look at the prompts and everything, I'd already managed to map Popsugar and Around the Year quite closely. And the Reading Women challenge is hard. Like, I feel guilty for not doing it because it really is great, because the mission of that is, you know, to read more books by and about women, and some of the prompts are excellent this year. I will link it below because you really should check it out, but just unfortunately for me it wasn't as flexible as I needed it to be. I think where Popsugar and Around the Year, those challenges, you can be really flexible with a lot of their prompts, but the Reading Women ones, they range from, you know, reading a book by a specific author, which is great. It's how I discovered like Jhumpa Lahiri, Isabel Allende, and Toni Morrison, but also that can be a bit restrictive, and then there are prompts for genres that I don't read, which I know is entirely the point of them, but for this year I just wanted to be a bit more relaxed. I will probably go back to Reading Women next year and maybe pick that as my main challenge and then try and fit other challenges around that. So of between 90 and 100 books that I want to read in 2021, 68 of them are for either one of the challenges. But like I said, don't worry, I'm not going to go through every single one. I'm just going to share some of my favourite prompts and the books that I'm going to read for them. So I'll kick off with Popsugar. Popsugar is like a lifestyle website. It has a US and a UK version. I think it might have an Australian version as well. I will link the UK version of the reading challenge down below. It's the same as the American one, there's just one prompt that has slightly different wording. But what really got me into that reading challenge in a big way is the fact that it has a really active Goodreads group, which I will also link in the description box below, because if you choose to take part in this challenge, it's a fabulous resource. So there are threads for every one of the prompts. You can get suggestions, tell people what you're reading, discuss it after you've read it, but also every week they do a check-in thread, which until I started BookTube I was religious about responding to, and it's just really nice to see what other people are reading and share what you've read, and I really want to get back into that this year as well because I do miss that community. And so I've picked out a few of my favourite prompts just to give you a flavour of what this challenge includes. So number 16 is to read a book by an Indigenous author. And so for this one I've picked The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich. This is a Dani inspired recommendation. Go and check out Dani's channel at Spenelli Speaks. She's talked about Louise Erdrich a couple of times. She's really sold her to me. So I went to see what books by that author my library had, and The Roundhouse is the one that jumped out to me. It sounds like a coming of age story for a young man from the Ojibwe reservation. I hope I've said that right. And he is seeking justice for a crime that has really impacted his family. So that sounds interesting as a premise anyway, but also I haven't read an awful lot by Indigenous authors. I did read Heartberries. I've forgotten the author's name. I'll put her name on the screen. But Heartberries is a memoir of an Indigenous woman, and that really it was really hard-hitting. I've also read There by Tommy Orange, which is more about the experience of a wider group of Indigenous people who live in, was it Detroit? My memory is so bad today. Again, I'll put the city on the screen. And I just thought that was really interesting, how the Indigenous culture was interacting with the more kind of white American culture, and where there were clashes and things like that. So I thought that was really interesting, and so I'm excited to read one which I think is actually set in the reservation, because that is a topic of the Indigenous life that I haven't really read about yet. Prompt number 27 is a book about a fresh start or a do-over. So I have picked Split by Suzanne Finnamore, which is a memoir of her divorce experience. Obviously very relevant to me. I am desperately hoping that this is the year that my divorce is finalised, and to me that is totally a fresh start, a total do-over, so I'm looking forward to reading about her experiences as well. Prompt 31 is to read a book by a blogger, vlogger or YouTube creator, and so I will be reading Charles Heathcote's Our Doris. Charlie is a fellow booktuber. He's also an author. I think there are 3 Our Doris books, and he's also written kind of a cozy mystery as well. There might be others. This will be his first book that I'll be reading. So Doris is part of the Women's Institute in Partridge Mews, and this is just a real kind of kitchen sink, very dry humour book, which if you listen to Charlie talk, I think I'll have his voice in my head as I'm reading this. He's really funny, and he's just fabulous to listen to, and I've watched some of his videos where he's talked about his writing process and things, and it will be really, really gratifying to finally actually read one of his works, and hopefully this won't be the only one I ever get to. And then prompt 38 is a book about art or an artist, and for this I have picked Jessie Burton's The Miniaturist. You may have seen me struggling with this sticker in a previous video. I cannot get it off, it's just ripping, so unfortunately it's spoiling the cover. But this is set in 17th century Amsterdam. It's about a woman called Nell who is newly married and trying to settle into the new kind of opulent lifestyle of that new marriage. It's opulent, but it's cold and lonely. So she is given like a doll's house, really, a replica of the house, and she engages the services of a miniaturist to furnish it. And while this helps her to navigate her new surroundings and the relationships and people that are contained within it, it also starts to reveal some dangerous secrets and foreshadow disaster that is looming. I know there's an adaptation of this, which I'll be hoping to get to watch after I've read the book. And I love Amsterdam. I know nothing about it in the 1700s, so this book sounds like a good one. Prompt number 30 is about a place you would like to visit in 2021. The way things are going, I don't think anyone would be doing much travelling next year. I don't think I'll have the funds to go travelling next year. It would be nice to get away for a little holiday. And so for this, I've picked Tangerine by Christine Mangan because it is set in Morocco, which is a country I would love to revisit. Firstly, because it's a fascinating country. It's fabulous. But also because the only time I've been there was on my honeymoon. And hopefully with the divorce coming through this year, I would quite like to reclaim certain places for myself. So I would quite like to return to Morocco and just make some new memories there. Whether I'll ever get the chance to, I don't know, but I can definitely read the book. And then prompt number 22 is a book set. I think it's entirely or almost entirely outdoors. So I am going with Wild by Cheryl Strayed. Everyone knows what this is. I've got the movie tie-in cover, which I'm not mad at because I love Reese Witherspoon. And this is about a woman who I know someone dies. So her mother passes away and her marriage falls apart. And so she decides to walk the Pacific Crest Trail, which I think is, it doesn't say how long it is. Oh, it does. 1,100 miles of the west coast of America. I've never seen the film. Again, I'll read the book and then try and find myself a copy of that as well. But I have this slight desire to do something similar. I would like to do the West Highland Way. I just have this urge to do it and just to kind of escape from everything. If you don't know, the West Highland Way is a walk from just outside Glasgow up to... is it Fort William? I can't remember, but you can do it in about a week. I think my brother's done it. I think he did the whole thing actually, yeah. And I kind of have an urge to do that. So because I'm probably not fit enough and I don't know where I would get a whole week to myself to just walk, I'm going to live vicariously through this. And then the next challenge I've mentioned is Around the Year, or ATY. This is completely based in a Goodreads group. And this is different, where Popsugar, the website, creators make their own prompts. This one, all the prompts are suggested by members of the group. They're voted on by members of the group. And so all of these prompts are completely self-generated. There are 52 prompts. They're done, it's basically about, it's structured to be a book a week. And I tend to like to read in the order of the prompts, which does muck up things like I never seem to get seasonal reads in or anything like that because I'm going in the order of the prompts. Again though, I'm going to try and do it this year. I don't know why it matters to me, but I quite like doing them in order. And so some favourite prompts from this is they've got a nice bookend of prompts. So the first prompt is a book related to in the beginning, and the final prompt of the challenge is a book related to in the end. And so for this, I've kind of just looked at life itself, and this one is for related to in the beginning, and it's the namesake because that title, I talked about this in my January TBR in my 21 and 21 video, so I won't go over it too much, but the namesake in the title of this Jhumpa Lahiri book is the first generation son of some Indian immigrants to America. So that's a beginning as well. He's the first American born son, but also the namesake. He's named after something. It clearly plays a role in this book, and the naming of a baby, it's all related to in the beginning. Whereas my one related to at the end, which this is a pitfall of doing them in order, is that I will be reading this around Christmas. But it's When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, which is his memoir essentially of dying. He was just about to finally qualify after years and years of training as a neurosurgeon when he developed cancer himself, and this is the memoir of his experience of the end of his life. Prompt number 12 is a book eligible for the Warwick Prize. So this is a prize for translated works. I think they're all fiction, and I went through the list. I didn't own any that I hadn't read already, so I just purchased this specifically for the challenge, and it's Will and Testament by Vigdis Hjorth. This is the story of a woman who's estranged from her family, but a dispute about inheritance brings her back and forces her to deal with memories and repercussions of quite a traumatic childhood. Vigdis Hjorth is, I think she's Scandinavian, but whenever I try and look up things in books, I'm always let down. Yeah, so she's Norwegian. I don't know if I've read a Norwegian author before. Was Stieg Larsson Norwegian? Again, answer on the screen. But yeah, this sounds yeah, really interesting. I love books about family dynamics, so that sounds great. And again, we have another set of prompts that are linked. So prompts 18, 19 and 20 are a book related to the past, a book related to the present, and a book related to the future. And so I've tried to link them all by a topic, and I picked Scottish independence. So my book for past is Chris Banbury's A People's History of Scotland. This is quite a chunker, so obviously it's non-fiction, but what spoke to me about this is that it's a history of the people rather than kings and queens and all of that sort of stuff. And I love social history, and I don't think I know an awful lot about the social history of my own country beyond kind of things around the Highland clearances and stuff that we learn at school. So I know I'm going to learn a lot from this. For the book in the present, I'm going for, this is a completely, well actually both the next two books for this prompt are complete wild cards. I've picked them to fit the prompt rather than trying to find a prompt that books that I really wanted to read are going to fit into, so I'm hoping these aren't shite. But I've got Two Closes and a Referendum by Mary McCabe. So this looks at people living in the same close, which if you're not from Scotland, a close is like, what else would you call it? Why do other people not have a word for this? Like if it's like a flat block and all the flats are off the same kind of set of stairs, that's your close. And it's just looking at, it is fiction, but it's looking at people who are on opposing sides of the independence argument at the time of the referendum. So not technically present, but you know, close enough, and that discussion is still going on. And so it's interesting to see, I think there's like even a couple where one is a yes voter, one is a no voter and things like that. So I think that's could be really, really interesting. And then my pick for the future is a book called State of Emergency by Richard Drysdale. And this is kind of a dystopia book set in post-referendum Scotland. I can't remember what the outcome of the referendum was, but it's where, you know, things have got a lot worse for Scotland. And I think particularly it's about corrupt politicians and things like that, which we all know ain't that fictional. So that's the three books I've picked for that one. What else have we got? Number 26 is a short book by an author new to you. So if the page count of Goodreads is right, I have picked The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is about two boys who find themselves in a reform school in Jim Crow era America, and just looks at how the experience of that shapes them. And as I understand it, it's based on a real reform school that was in operation for like over 100 years. I have heard a lot of good things about this as well, but just at Colson Whitehead in general. I know, is it the Underground Railroad is meant to be phenomenal, but I wanted to try something a bit shorter by him first before I try anything else, so this was a perfect prompt for me. Prompt number 39 is about a book involving an immigrant, and so I've gone with Black and British by David Olusoga. Funny story about this book. So I had ordered a copy from Waterstones and it arrived and everything. It was very short, and it looked very simple, and I was like, this is not what I was expecting this book to be like. you know, it's been turned into a documentary and all these things, and I was just like, this is odd. And then I think I saw someone else talking about it on BookTube, and they put up a picture of their cover, and their cover looked very different. And I was like, see, that's the book that I was expecting to get. I just don't understand what's going on here. And I can't remember what led me down the path of that, but I realised David Olusoga has 2 books called Black and British. They have different subtitles. And the one I had bought was the short history, when I actually meant to buy the other one. So I've had to return it to Waterstones. Once I get my refund for that, I will buy the actual book that I meant to buy. But yeah, this is a history of Black people in Britain, and it's something that we don't talk about enough. We aren't taught it in school, and after I read Homecoming by Colin Grant in particular, and really loved hearing about the Windrush generation, it's just something I want to know more about. So that's why I've picked that. And then the final prompt I'll talk about is one called is one that says refers to a person without giving their name, which actually took me a minute to figure out what that even meant. But what I'm going for that is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Everyone knows what this is about, surely, but it's about 2 sisters, one who seems to keep killing her boyfriends, and her sister has to clean up the mess. But when the non-murderous sister really kind of falls in love with one of her co-workers, things take a bit of a turn, because the murderous sister starts dating him, and you know, she has a track record for things not going particularly well in that department, and this is basically about how that all plays out, which just sounds like it's going to be a ride. So that's just a taste of some of the prompts that I'm doing for the challenges, some of the books I'm going to be reading to fill those prompts. I've told you a bit about the challenges in case you're interested in doing them yourselves. If you're doing either of these challenges, or even if you're doing the Reading Women one, drop me a comment below. I would love to know if anyone else is doing these. And I guess this is just, I would quite like to, when I'm doing my wrap-ups and things, I would just like to, you know, say which prompt I read a book for and how it fit that prompt as well, just to give me something else to talk about, really. So when I do that, you will now know what the hell I'm talking about. So if anyone else is doing any challenges this year, best of luck to you, but more importantly, just have fun, and until next time, bye. I've tried to match whatever I'm reading for a Popsugar reading challenge with one of the reading for whatever I'm reading for the